Hello everyone, welcome to another video, and today I'll be sharing two builds for Noelle. Yes, two, not one. There isn't just a single way to build this character, and there are two ways you can use her in your groups. You can either use her as your main character, like your actual main DPS, or you can use her as an off-field character you will swap to whenever her sweeping strikes, which is her elemental burst, is available. So we'll be covering here the best artifacts and substats, as well as the best weapon you can use for Noelle. But before we get to that, it's important we go through her talents and the constellations, because understanding those is crucial so you can actually understand why you need to build her kinda as an hybrid character. Many people say you should focus 100% on defense on Noelle, and that's not entirely true, at least not until the 6th constellation, and I'll explain why. Let's start with the talents, and let's start with the passives first, right? These ones you will just unlock as you level her up, right? Nice and Clean you unlock on the 4th Ascension, for example. Nice and Clean basically reduces the cooldown of Breastplate, which is her elemental skill, by 1 every 4th hit from a normal or charge attack. This also works while Sweeping Strikes is up, but hitting multiple enemies with a single attack is only counted as 1 hit. Now, this is very good, but it doesn't mean that you can always maintain Breastplate 100% of the time. It will really depend on what you're killing. If an enemy dies and you have nothing to attack, well, you cannot really reduce the cooldown of Breastplate. Besides that, Devotion is mostly a utility passive for your group. And this is especially good if you're using Noelle as an off-field DPS, which means a character you will swap to, right? This basically triggers a shield based off 400% of Noelle's defense whenever any other character that isn't Noelle falls below 30% HP. So this is also very strong. It can only occur once every 60 seconds, but this basically means that having Noelle in your group is preventing people from dying, so that's very good. Now onto Breastplate. This is her elemental skill, and it's also the skill you will use if you're healing, and the skill you need up at all times, or at least you need a shield up at all times if you want to do damage. Why? We'll cover that as soon as we start talking about artifacts. Don't worry about it. When Noelle's normal and charge attack hits a target, they have a certain chance to regenerate HP for all characters. Now this chance at level 5 is 54%, which means no, she doesn't heal on every hit like Jean on her elemental burst, for example. Which makes Noelle kinda an iffy healer until you get at least her first constellation. She still does the job, and she's more of a tank than a healer before the first constellation, but after you get the first constellation, she does both pretty well. Now, this skill also does damage, which scales off of her defense. The damage is geo damage, which means you can trigger a crystallized elemental reaction and generate some crystal particles which you can pick up for elemental shields, like a fire shield, a lightning shield, and that's extremely useful when you're fighting tough enemies. Besides that, the damage absorption and the healing scales off of her defense as well. It's a percentage of her defense plus a flat value, which levels up as you get more levels on Breastplate. Skill has a 24 seconds cooldown, which is why you might not be able to maintain it 100% uptime, especially if you are just switching off to her. Now, if you're using her as your main DPS with one of the builds we'll talk about, then you might be able to just maintain Breastplate at all times. That if enemies don't break it, of course. The next skill we should talk about is obviously Sweeping Strikes. Now, this is the core skill for Noelle, and this is why you build Noelle the way you do, right? When you use Sweeping Strikes, you will be able to increase your attack range. And besides that, the most important thing to understand about Sweeping Strikes is that your attack damage is going to be converted to geo damage. This means that attack percent, critical rate and critical damage still work, but physical damage percent is not going to help you. Normal attack and charged attack damage is still going to work, as well as geo damage. But remember, just don't build physical damage percent on Noelle, because whenever you pop your sweeping time, that's not gonna do anything for you. Besides that, sweeping time scales off of her defense, right? The skill is going to convert at the 6th level 56% of her defense into attack, right? It's directly going to convert your defense into attack. When you pop this ability, you will see that your attack value here will increase. based off of her defense. Now, the reason why you shouldn't build Noelle full defense on all of your artifacts until you have the 6th constellation is because while you benefit from your defense, that's still only 56% of it being converted into attack, right? And yet, 100% of your attack is, well, valuable attack for your damage, which means that you still need to focus on attack, but you also want to build defense on her. Next, let's talk about the constellations. First constellation is I Got Your Back, and this basically makes Noelle a quite good healer. While Sweeping Time and Breastplate are both in effect, you will have 100% chance to trigger the healing effect from Breastplate while attacking. Now, it's important to note that you need both skills up at the same time, right? This is not gonna make Breastplate alone heal 100% of the time. You gotta have Sweeping Time up for that to happen. So this is what makes Noelle like heal consistently. Combat Made is also very important, and it tells you a little bit about how to play Noelle depending on which build you pick. So this decreases your charge attack, like stamina consumption, by 20% and increases her charge attack damage by 15%, which means, yes, she's kind of a spin to win character. Now, it doesn't mean you just gotta be using charge attack all the time. It's gonna depend on your situation in combat, obviously, but this does make her charge attack like go ahead of her normal attacks. If Vulnerable Maid and Favonius Reaper obviously are just constellations that will increase your skills, so it's obviously great to have them. To be clean, that means that when Breastplate duration expires or is destroyed, it will trigger a 400% geo attack burst, right, of damage just around her. The range isn't huge, but I mean, it's a nice thing because your shield is likely going to break eventually, especially if you're doing the very high Abyss Pyro floors. And Must Be Spotless is literally what can make Noelle become a beast. Now, obviously, that's the 6th constellation, and it's way harder to get there, but basically what it does is Sweeping Time increases Noelle's attack by an additional 50% of her defense. So let's say that my Sweeping Times right now is level 6, as I showed it to you guys, and it's increasing her attack by 56% of her defense. If I had the 6th constellation, this would increase by 106% of her defense, right? And that is when it becomes worth to build Noelle with more defense and defense percent than attack or attack percent or anything else, right? That's when you want to switch to a really full defense. But if you want to do damage before the 6th constellation, you will need attack percent, crit rate, crit damage, and geo percent damage, as well as normal / charged attack percent damage, right? Keep that in mind. Don't just go full defense on all your artifacts, because, well, you're only benefiting for about 56 to 60% of your defense in terms of damage and output. Now, for artifacts, you can use 2 options early on, and when I say early on, is pretty much like basically before you start farming artifacts from domains, which I honestly recommend doing past adventure rank 40, because that's when you will start getting 5-star artifacts, and you can use your resin more efficiently elsewhere before that. So before you get to that point, you should be looking into Gladiator's Finale, which is a very good piece for normal attack. Keep in mind, her 2nd constellation increases her charge attack damage, and this doesn't, okay? So if you're using the Gladiator's Finale, you really want to just be using normal attacks, not the charged attack, right? On the 2-piece, it increases your attack percent by 18%, and on the 4-piece, it will increase your normal attack damage by 35%, not your charged attack damage. So it's a huge damage boost, and both of these things do work with Sweeping Strike, because none of them is physical damage. Now, it's 100% okay to go for attack percent here, unless you have like the 6th constellation. Then you might want to just switch off to defense percent. Besides Gladiator's Finale, you also can use Martial Artist, especially if you have her 2nd constellation. I would say this one is better, because obviously her 2nd constellation improves her charge attack, and this skill does work with charge attack. It does scale that, right? Increase normal attack and charge attack damage by 15% on the 2-piece and on 4-piece. After using an elemental skill, which for her is Breastplate, it increases it by an additional 25% for 8 seconds. Now, you're spinning for 5 seconds, which means you can benefit from this 25 seconds on a charge attack, like, really well, okay? But still, remember that her Breastplate, like, base cooldown is 24 seconds, and yes, you can reduce it. Every 4 hits, you will reduce it by 1 second. But this isn't up all the time. That's basically what I'm trying to say. But the best set for Noelle isn't any one of these two. It's actually a set that comes from this domain, the domain of Guyun, over here in Liyue. Set's called Retracing Bolide. Retracing Bolide increases shield strength by 35% on a 2-piece, but this isn't the primary reason we're getting this set. It's actually the 4-piece. While protected by a shield, gain an additional 40% normal and charge attack damage. Now, 40% is pretty much the same amount you will be getting from a martial artist, but this is going to be up for as long as you have a shield, and not only for 8 seconds. And the increased shield strength by 35% is actually going to increase Noelle's Breastplate absorption as well, right? You will be able to sustain it for longer. Also, it's important to note that while protected by a shield means that both her Breastplate as well as any shields you generate from the crystallized elemental reaction are going to proc this 4-piece effect, right? So whenever you use Breastplate or whenever you attack with Sweeping Strikes and you're doing geo damage and you trigger like a crystallized elemental reaction from that, you'll see those crystal drops. If you pick them up, even if your Breastplate has been broken or isn't up, that will already be enough to benefit from the 4-piece effect of Retracing Bolide. So I recommend start farming this set. You can either start farming as early as you can, but if you're a free-to-play player like myself, then I recommend starting beyond 40. I'm adventure rank 39, I'm just waiting to get to 40, because that's when you can start getting 5-star versions of it. Before that, you will only get up to 4 stars. Now finally, let's talk about the weapon. There are basically 2 weapons that you can pick for Noelle, and they are extremely strong. I'm not sure if there are like new weapons coming out in the future. I bet there will be, and I'm not sure how they are gonna work, but right now in the game, you want to choose between White Blind or the Favonius Greatsword. Let's first talk about White Blind. White Blind secondary stat is defense %, right? Which is absurdly good for Noelle, especially if you have the 6th Constellation. And it has good base attack as well. Besides that, its Infusion Blade effect means that on hit, normal, or charge attacks increase attack and defense. This is amazing for Noelle by a certain %, depending on your refinement rank, for 6 seconds. There are maximum of 4 stacks for this effect, and it can occur once every 0.5 seconds. This is the best weapon if you're using Noelle as a swap to character. If you just want to swap to her and pop Breastplate, Elemental Burst, which is sweeping time, and do a charge attack to heal and do a lot of damage, I 100% recommend going for White Blind. Now, if you want to play Noelle as your main damage dealer and you want to build your team around Noelle, that is actually possible. Yes, you might still need to switch off to other characters depending on the enemies you're facing, like to break elemental shields from enemies, for example. But Noelle can be your main DPS, especially if you have the 6th Constellation. That being the case, you want to switch off to the Favonius Greatsword. I'll show the picture on the screen because I don't have this weapon. I'm a free-to-play player and I can only do so much to generate content for you guys. But with the Favonius Greatsword, you will have energy recharge as your secondary stat, and you will be generating energy particles from your critical hits. Now, with this weapon, you can actually maintain Noelle's sweeping time, her elemental burst, up 100% of the time, which means you don't really need to switch off of her. You can just keep smacking enemies and generating those particles from crits and just from the raw energy recharge. So if you want to use Noelle as a main DPS, definitely go for that. And last but not least, let's just go through the attributes again, right? It's attack and defense, which obviously are important for her, and yes, you want a mix of both. Before 6th Constellation, go for more attack. After 6 Constellations, honestly, go for more defense. But besides those, you will also need critical rate and critical damage, right? Critical rate and critical damage will scale your damage by a lot. You see, right now I have 33.8% critical rate, and whenever I crit, I do, well, double damage, right? 105.7%, it's a little bit more than double damage. And this is absurdly good with Noelle, especially if you're using her charge attack build, right? Like if you're just spinning and doing those quick crits, they will hit a lot, and a lot of enemies as well. I really recommend getting those. Remember, you should not get physical damage percent. Whenever your stripping time is up, you're not benefiting from that, but you can use geo damage bonus. I have none on my gears right now, but if you do get a piece with that, it could work. Elemental Mastery isn't really useful for her because it kind of just increases the power of the shields created by the crystallized elemental reaction, but you don't really need that, especially because you already have a 2-set bonus from the set we were talking about, increasing your shield's potential by 35%. And last but not least, energy recharge is actually really good on her. If you're using the Favonius Greatsword, energy recharge loses its value a little bit because you kind of don't need it, but if you're using White Blind, definitely be happy whenever you get any piece that has high energy recharge on your artifacts. Alright guys, that will be it for the Noelle guide. I hope it was helpful to you, and I hope it helped to clarify how to balance her attack and defense. I know many people just go around saying, oh, Noelle needs Substats or Noelle needs a balanced amount of attack and defense, but it's important to understand that things change before 6th Constellation and after 6th Constellation, because you shouldn't really just go for a defense before you get the 6th Constellation, right? You still are gonna get way more value out of attack if you're not talking about healing. Obviously here I'm talking mostly about damage, right? It's a DPS Noelle, or how to do damage on the character. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it was useful to you. If so, leave a comment, leave a like. Remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. And you can watch me live on Twitch from Monday to Friday, starting at around 8 PM Central European time. That's it for this video. See you guys on the next one. Peace.